those of you that are regulars know, this is very much a discussion forum, and it's great to have benefit of everybody's expertise and experience and just ideas. So at the beginning, it's just a few things, just throw some thoughts into the room, really, because we want to kind of be challenging what we think of as agile working, because I think it's a phrase that we hear quite a lot, but I think generally it's being considered within a very narrow field in terms of sort of flexible working. But actually, if we're really looking at what do we mean by agile working, then it's a very different thing, or creating an agile organization. So it's the difference, I think, between being forced to make changes rapidly. You know, it's a crisis response to something that's happened, or is it about being a step ahead with practical solutions? So as an organization, we can adapt quickly to changes in the environment where we're operating. So, you know, most organizations had a dramatic change of ways of working a year ago, and some would have been better placed than others to have dealt with those changes. You know, albeit we quite often are dealing with changes that we can't anticipate. That's actually part of it. The agility, if you've got the agility, that puts you in a place, you know, it's kind of being on the starting blocks. And when I was looking into this a bit more, I found some really interesting research papers, and this model is one that I've found quite interesting, the idea of, you know, agility drivers, agility capabilities, and agility providers. And if we think, I guess I was coming from the perspective of HR, that actually our role is about how are we going to make sure that we're creating the agility capabilities as well as some of the providers. And in terms of that, the responsiveness, that would be things like, you know, not just being ready to react immediately to change, but actually how we recover from changes. You know, when we're going through things, the competency, how are we making sure that we've got competent, knowledgeable and empowered people to be able to make change happen quickly, and how do those all sort of integrate together? And the flexibility, both, you know, the organizational flexibility, but the people flexibility. You know, have we got people in roles in a way that they can adapt to changed needs? And obviously the speed in the operational side, how quickly we can actually make those changes happen. And the research was looking at the different things that organizations that were considered to be highly agile were actually looking at, and what was happening under this. So these are things that I was thinking that we would use within our discussion later. But under work design, it was looking at things like, you know, what actual job practices did you have in place? You know, job rotation, secondment, the anytime, any place, anywhere type working, how you design roles to actually have flexible and fluid job descriptions that actually they're designed to give employees freedom to deliver what's needed, rather than being confined to strict parameters of a job. And actually how you have the jobs designed so you encourage cross-functional working rather than the silo working that we all know can actually be quite restrictive in terms of how we can work. The recruitment, selection and retention. You know, are we recruiting on the behaviours and attributes that focus on agility, that like that agile approach? Are we encouraging movement between roles? Are we looking at developing an internal talent pipeline, for example? And that's kind of linked to the learning and development. Is it designed to the organisation's strategic direction, which, you know, logically it is anyway, but are we actually developing the attributes that we need for agility within an organisation? And the performance management, are we setting KPIs that relate to agility, being able to adapt quickly? Are we setting goals based on common performance measures that aren't creating cross-functional conflict, that actually one team can deliver but at the expense of another? And around focusing on outputs and outcomes, not input and presenteeism. the rewards and recognitions, they were looking at organisations that were highly agile or met the criteria in relation to the research. They had looked at continuous reward and recognition, and that were recognising people that were demonstrating the values that were recognised as the valuable ones.
Marion, can I just stop there? Can I just ask, if you're not on mute at this stage, could you just pop yourself on mute, because there's quite a bit of background noise. Thanks. Sorry, Marion.
And on the employee communication side, you know, is it, most of these are things that hopefully you'd be working towards anyway, the open two-way, but looking at channels for the bottom-up communication, actually encourage sharing of knowledge from people in all aspects of the organisation through a wide variety of mechanisms and channels. And empowerment, you know, about involving people in decision making. A lot of these things are common to any good organisational strategy. Looking at the empowerment, not the micromanagement side of things, and having authority based on knowledge rather than hierarchy, and, you know, building ultimately a climate of trust. So these were things that, say, were found as being common behaviours or approaches amongst organisations that demonstrated agility. So maybe some thoughts that have been prompted there. And in terms of what we can then be thinking about and discussing in groups now is, you know, what does this mean for us in terms of mindset and behaviours that we need to be developing? And I'm thinking this in terms of, you know, us as HR professionals, what do we need to be doing? What does agility actually mean in terms of our HR systems and processes? Have we got things in place that are preventing us from supporting an organisation and requiring rapid change? And, you know, those are general questions to throw into the mix. The main thing is that you have a conversation that's helpful for you. So if I stop sharing, it will welcome back. You've had a good discussion. So the room I joined, we were having a good debate. It would be great just to sort of hear the main themes that you were covering, any particular things that resonated when somebody raised them. So where should we start with? I'm going to start with group 2. For some reason it did very uneven group numbers, not sure why, which was Julie, Joanne, Suzanne. Want somebody from your group offer to feedback?
Shall I? So we had a discussion initially around sort of obviously the hours, the kind of being able to work anytime, anywhere, and then we went on to talking about. So I used our company as an example. During the pandemic, we're a building consultancy, construction consultancy, and during the pandemic, most of our sites closed down, and we suddenly had a workforce that didn't have any work to do, and I'm sure that's familiar across the board. And so part of being agile in the future is maybe where we're multidisciplinary, so we provide lots of different consultancy services. Perhaps it's about some of our staff actually having a second specialism where that's possible. So where the sites closed down a bit later on, there was suddenly a huge rise in the amount of health and safety work that we picked up. And it might have been useful if some of our surveyors, for example, also had health and safety as a second expertise, so that they could, you know, just jump across onto different projects and help out. And then we started talking about maybe trying to get this idea of, instead of working in silos, which I think you mentioned, but trying to get breadth of experience across the company, setting it as an expectation. So someone suggested perhaps when we bring apprentices in, to give them that breadth across the company before trying to send them down one particular specialism. Whereas at the moment, we'll take on a surveying apprentice or an architectural apprentice. Perhaps we should take on construction apprentices. So you set that expectation that as they progress up through, if they want to get into the senior bands, that they will need to, you know, in the main, diversify in what they do. But then also looking at future leadership, there's not a lot we can do with our leadership at the moment because they're owners, they're equity partners, and you know they're set in their ways. But looking at future behaviours and expectations of leaders, so that they're not 100% fee earners. Perhaps there'll be some expectation that they won't just be stuck within their own business revenue, which is how it works at the moment, but that they will need to take a much broader view and almost be strategic leaders of more of the disciplines, to try and encourage that as as you come up through, that you have to know a bit more about what's going on across the rest of the company.
It's like the idea of leaders having strategic rather than their specialism focused.
And then with regards to what we can do, we were just talking about collecting data, really to sort of show. So I was explaining that one of our main services that we offer is an employer's agent service, but actually I've just found out today through a meeting with LinkedIn that although there's 36,000 surveyors on LinkedIn, only 483 of them are showing employer's agent when we search for it as a keyword, and that's kind of our main business diet. So it's kind of thinking about, have we got the right business model? And then we need to look at things like attrition. Why are we leaving people? But also last year we had 14 people that we made offers to, not all surveyors, who just didn't join us. So we also need to look at how we're recruiting. It's all the stuff that you do go on about as HR, but now we've got it's about building up the figures so that you can start to prove that the things that you were talking about actually do make a difference.
Thank you. Room 4, so that was Jackie, Natalie, Paula. One of you got a feedback, please?
Yeah, I don't mind. So I was just coming off mute. We were exploring a variety of subjects actually whilst we were talking, and I just captured some notes. So of course, if I've missed anything, then my fellow roomies can jump in with that one as well. So thank you for that one. We explored the concept of educating leadership in the idea of agility. If we're going to be having conversations about it, then we all need to have that comprehension and consistency of what we mean by being agile. If you say to a room of 6, 7, 8, 9 different folk, and you say, think of a car, you're all going to think of a very different car. And it's the same concept with agility. So if we're talking about educating in terms of agility, that is a good place to start in terms of that consistency. But the year that we've had change prior to pandemic year that we've had. So the year is really more of a catalyst for change and the ability to change. So where we might have been meeting blockers previously to persuade others to change and work more agile, that actually we've now got a year of evidence-based detail to help us in that perspective and that argument. So it's more of a continuity of that. And that we explored whether we would have a bit of a soft launch or a soft continuity of that versus the hard launch, and what language we're using around those discussion points as well. Would we actually call it out as cultural change, or would we actually just start talking about the things that we want to change, and how some of that can be supportive or can actually be a bit frightening perhaps. And then the idea of actually creating that agile workforce, that agile environment. Paula raised the great point of recruiting it in, recruiting in the skills of agility, but also so therefore you're creating agility, but not by focusing on it. You're focusing on creating an environment of trust, of enabling others to do the job that they are hired to do. They've got the skill set, they've got the temperaments, everything that actually come together to create an agile environment. So it's a purposeful development, but it's actually not saying we're focusing on agility, we're focusing on everything that creates that circumstance. I've missed so much of what we were like grasshoppers jumping around about so much, and we were just beginning to explore the blockers, what that we might face as well. In being able to be successful as HR in the room for those conversations. But if I've missed anything, Paula or Jackie, that thanks Paula, that was vital to her. Thanks Jackie.
I dropped in with some of that, but actually it was also talking about not everybody would be suitable to want to work in an agile organisation. So why it's so important to be looking at the skills and behaviours around recruitment. Some people want to know the clear parameters of their role. What they'll be doing today is what they'll be doing in a year's time. So actually so much of changing the culture is about developing or recruiting to the mindsets and behaviours. Thank you. Room 1 was Elaine, Janice, Kenny, Susie. Somebody there like to, and some others, somebody likes to feedback from that group? Anybody going to?
I'll pick up the mantle here. We talked about Kenny's and Karen's situation at work and how they well, I think particularly Kenny was talking about how within a week they'd managed to get 100% of their employees working remotely and how they supported them in doing that. So we're actually looking at how it was to be agile. And we started off by talking about mindsets and how we felt a growth mindset was most appropriate. And also touched on sort of having a high trust position. I think Karen was talking about that. And how, to develop trust, we need to be able to show our vulnerability, really, to be able to talk about how difficult it is, learn from that and move on. So with Kenny, I think we were saying, Kenny, that it was sort of fail fast, it was do it, learn from it, move on. There was nothing about blame. I don't know if I've missed anything out. If anyone wants to add in, I think
that's quite interesting, because the fact that we had to adapt very rapidly because of things that were forced on us isn't in my head the same as being agile.
Okay.
Agile is being ready with things in place and to actually, that it's no big deal to adapt to a change in the market. I mean, nothing would have prepared us for last year, obviously, but it's about that difference between being on the starting blocks, ready to run in any direction that we need to, against something happening to us and needing to respond quickly. That's kind of it where I think of the difference in my head.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
But that's not in any level trying to negate the huge achievements of any organisation in the last year, because we've just all had to make massive changes at pace. So room 3, Flo, Amy and Inga. I don't know why yours was a little group.
So, but feel free to chip in, guys, if I'm not covering everything off. So some of the points have already been covered, actually, about educating the leadership team, because sometimes they can be a bit set in their ways, and coaching them around, introducing different parts of the business to other parts of the business and how those functions work across the business. We also, interestingly enough, actually, Marion talked about how it all ties in with company values. So with the cross-functioning of roles, recruiting people that actually are happy to do that, so making sure the values are correct from the outset, in terms of people that are willing to cross other functions as well. So is there anything else that I've missed, Inga?
A couple of, I think Anna's dropped off now, but she mentioned a couple of things. So recruiting for ambiguity, people who have a tolerance for ambiguity, and I loved the way she talked about the values that they've set up are kind of Marmite values, like you like them or you don't, and that helps them to attract and recruit the people who are going to fit well with their organisation. So I tend to take a lot of notes from other people when we do these sessions, so I'm just referring back to that.
We also mentioned about the actually, I think this was your point, Inga, about the flexible benefits. So if we are expecting employees to be flexible, a lot of people are, as we've come out of the pandemic, are expecting flexible benefits in return.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Inga. I love that. The recruiting for ambiguity, I think, is a brilliant phrase. I love that.
Yeah, that was Anna's, not mine, but yeah, happy to share.
No, you can credit her. Yeah, that's fun. Okay, just conscious that we're wrapping up in terms of time, and as you know, with these sessions, these are never about going away with clear answers or framework. The idea is that you'll have a bit of discussion and reflection time that will hopefully prompt thinking going forward. So I hope you've picked up some some new perspectives, some perhaps different ideas, and things that you can take back. So Amy, shall I pass back to you to wrap up and tell people whatever's happening next week?
Yes, please. So thanks everyone for attending. Please remember to like and share my post if you can after the call. Really good to see that quite a few of you have also jumped onto the Guilds app, and that we do put all of our recorded boardrooms into our members area. So for those that haven't already joined, I will send you out the link after the call. We'll be in touch with regards to future boardrooms. We're actually having a meeting tomorrow. We've got a couple of really good webinars coming up over the next couple of months as well. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled and we'll be in contact. And obviously if anybody is recruiting as well, it might be worth just mentioning, because I've heard a couple of people talk about recruitment. Don't just remember that we've got our other functions as well, our sister company. So we've got accountancy recruit and FD recruit, as well as HR recruit.
And actually, could I just butt in with one more thing? So we've got a meeting tomorrow to plan the next month's event. So if there's any particular topics that you would find of particular interest, if you could let us know, obviously connect with Amy, Jo or Claire, whoever you know best, or on LinkedIn, that would be really helpful. So we make sure that we meet whatever is helpful for everybody, really.